Ladies and gentlemen, I have some bad news, and I'm afraid to say that the summer is over. But the good news is that game season is upon us. We've already got launches like Starfield that have just come out, and loads of people want to upgrade their gaming PC. We've had so many different components come out this year. We've just had the most recent launches from AMD. So where does this actually leave us when it comes to PC builds? What are the best PC builds that you can build right now? What's great? What should you avoid? And ultimately, what are the best PC builds you can get for the different price points? If only there was someone out there that could walk you through everything. Oh wait, it's me. So join us as we walk you through the very best PC builds that you can build right now, after a short word from this video's sponsor. MSI's E-series of core liquid coolers have arrived, bringing classy and cool to your gaming PC. The enlarged copper base on both the E240 and E360 is perfect for the latest generation of CPUs, proving ideal for those that want some serious cooling performance. Not only that, but ARGB is present on both the fans and the blockhead, which even rotates 270 degrees for perfect alignment every time. Learn more today with the link down below. Rightio then, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's crack on. And obviously the way that this is going to work is we'll be looking at pricing from the US, the UK, but if you do want to cheat and see everything without actually watching the video, I don't recommend it. You can find all of my Amazon, Newegg, all of the links listed down below, but then you wouldn't know why they were picked. Let's start by kicking off with a budget-friendly build though, and we're going to work with Newegg here. And actually I think the best way to choose components at the moment is to compare the price of the motherboards. So we're going to look at Intel and AMD. If you want to go as cheaply as possible, then I'd actually recommend maybe buying like a used Intel CPU, something like a Core i5 from the previous generation, or you can look at getting something like a Core i3. It's only 4 cores, so it's not even going to work with every single game now, but for what most people are probably going to use it for, it should be fine. It's just you are going to run into CPU bottlenecks at a later date, so be cautious if you do want to go down that route, or you can step up to something like a Ryzen 5 7600, but then you are starting to get into the realms of not necessarily a budget-friendly rig, but a very well-priced performance rig. So let's have a look what we have. Obviously we're going to be looking at LGA 1700, and we're basically going to go low to high. You've got a B760M here from ASRock. They're very bare bones though. Well, we've got this one from Gigabyte, look, the B760M. We've got 4 RAM slots, 2 SSD slots by the look of it. Okay I/O, not loads of USB ports. This is something you're always going to sort of miss out on a budget-friendly motherboard, but you can always use extensions and things, so it's not the end of the world. You do also have ASRock's PG Lightning for pretty much the same price. Does look like you've got slightly better cooling on this motherboard. But what about if we look over at Team Red? Let's do the same thing. Sort by lowest, and this of course brings up the A620 motherboards. A lot of them only have 2 RAM slots though, which is pretty annoying. It does hamper your upgradability. But here we do have one from Gigabyte, look, that does have 4 RAM slots and is actually available for less money at $99. So those were the motherboards, but of course to actually make our decision, we do need to take the price of the CPUs into the mix. And looking at the Intel options, they are quite a lot cheaper than what Ryzen has on offer. I mean, the best one here in terms of value is going to be this 12100F, but as we've already kind of mentioned, it's only a 4-core CPU, which means you probably will need to upgrade it in the not too distant future. Or maybe you look at the i5 12400F, because this is $150. This is going to fit nicely into our budget. It is going to have more cores, it's going to last you a bit longer, but it's not got the same single-threaded gaming performance that you're going to find from AMD. But when we navigate over to AMD, you'll just see that they are a fair bit more expensive. I mean, the cheapest one here is $200 for the 7600, which, as I've mentioned, is a much, much better gaming CPU. But this one is used like new, shipped from China. Might be fine, but I don't know. I personally would probably rather just spend as little money as possible, work out what it was that I needed, and then upgrade that particular component. But we have one other option, and that is to look properly at the used market. I mean, yeah, scrolling down here, I definitely think there are deals to be had, probably for around about $160, $170 on something like a 12600 or 12600K. I think that is going to make the largest amount of sense if you want to get maximum bang for buck. Obviously, you won't get a warranty, but I think if you're willing to do this, then you're going to get more performance, you won't need to upgrade it, you've got loads more cores, and it's going to be fantastic for a budget-friendly gaming PC. So yeah, I definitely think if you put the time and the effort in, you could probably get one of these for around about $170 or so and get that much better performance. So we're going to say we'll go with this. and we're going to go with the ASRock PG Lightning motherboard to go with it and make our system run. We will of course also be needing a computer case. We're going for micro ATX because that is the size of the motherboard. Slightly smaller. Personally, I quite like this, but it's not to everybody's taste if you want to stack loads of PCI cards or buy something that is massive. Let's have a look. We'll filter by micro ATX and we'll see what we have. I mean, something like this is fantastic, but obviously it's quite a lot more expensive than what we're going for today. Or look, you've got the brand new Cooler Master V300. Got more features. Love the fact that they haven't done anything about the sag on this. But that does of course mean that we've got the older generation here, look, that we could use and save ourselves some money. I think this is going to be worth doing. We're just going to have to make sure that we do buy a graphics card that is small enough to actually fit in there. And of course, on that topic, we probably should be looking and talking about the graphics card. And we're going to try and do it new today. But again, if you want to save money, then look at the used market. There are loads of deals to be had. But I would probably lean towards the Radeon 6600 at the moment because that is going to give you the best bang for buck, really. And loads of performance for 1080p. Most people don't need any more, unless you're playing at 1440p or 4K or ultra wide. Okay, you get the point. So let's have a look what we have. GPUs and video graphics cards. RX 6000 series, 6600, and we'll go from lowest to high. Let's have a look. I mean, this was one here from ASRock for $209, or you can get this triple fan one from Gigabyte. I mean, yeah, I think this is pretty good value. You're going to get a lot of gaming performance out of this. Height-wise, it should be pretty standard. Length of this is the only thing, obviously, making sure all the components do actually fit in their respective cases and things. I always do my best to make sure everything is compatible, but obviously without building them properly myself, we can never be 100% sure, so do bear that in mind. But the GPU length is 282 millimeters, and the case will do a maximum of 360. So there we go, should be absolutely fine. Cooler Master Q300L and a 6600, let's go with that. I'm just thinking out loud though, because the only thing to bear in mind if you do go for a used 12600K is that you will need some decent cooling to get this under its best conditions, basically. I mean, you can always limit it in the motherboard so it can use less power, generates less heat, but crucially you will not get a cooler in the box with this, whereas if you did go for something like a 12400F, you would have a stock cooler inside the box. As we are going with this, we will need to grab ourselves a cooler. And I haven't actually used this one before, but I have certainly heard of this, the Thermalright Peerless Assassin. This is definitely a larger CPU cooler. It comes in white and black, but it should have plenty of cooling potential, look, which will work wonders with our CPU. 155 on the height. And yes, here it says CPU cooler height maximum of 159. So that is going to be tight. I'm just going to give you the information and say that technically this should fit. Let's move on though and grab ourselves some RAM. This is a DDR5 motherboard, so you will need to get some DDR5 compatible memory. Some Patriot Viper Venom. Looks to be quite low profile, which is going to be important with our cooler. The cache latency is 40, so it's definitely not the best, but you know, budget-friendly rig, especially with an Intel CPU, this should be fine. Let's compare this to the T-Force RAM though. No, that seems to be exactly the same look. But that one is 5200, whereas the Viper is 5600. So let's go with the Viper again. We're gonna assume that it should work with the cooler, but we can never be 100%. We will of course also be needing to grab ourselves an SSD. I would go for Gen 4 if you can. There's usually only like $10, maybe $15 in it now, so it's not like they're hugely expensive. You don't need to buy the absolute fastest one. I mean, look, here you can get a 1 terabyte Gen 4 drive for $50. They really are getting less and less expensive. So as you can see, you've definitely got quite a few options here. I mean, let's have a look at this one from Team Group, PNY, and I guess this slower one from PNY. And let's have a look at the speed. So the MP44L is up to 4500. The T-Force is a lot slower, but it is cheaper, but I don't really think it's cheap enough to warrant losing out on the speed. PNY is also slower, which means that the Team Group is clearly our winner. 1 terabyte, $42 in the sale. No brainer. So at this stage, it's pretty much just the power supply to go. And I do remember building in the Q300L when it originally launched. I think it was like an earlier version of it. The one that we've got in the basket is slightly newer, so it might have changed slightly, but there weren't really that many places to store all of your cables. So I would strongly recommend getting a modular power supply if you can, if you do want to go for this sort of chassis. Search from low to high, and it seems that our best option is actually the CX650M from Corsair. Corsair's a reputable brand. I think this is one of the most recent power supplies as well. It's definitely not rated the absolute best for efficiency. It's only rated bronze, but personally, I would always want to get a power supply that I felt comfortable having, and Corsair ones, I don't think I've ever had an issue. Maybe one power supply once, it was a little bit of a whiny noise, but that's about it, and I've used a lot. Cool, so we'll add that to our cart. We'll make sure we actually have everything here. So we've got our case, motherboard, CPU is obviously separate, the RAM will go in, we have the cooler, and I want to stress, I want to highly emphasize on this, the cooler is far from guaranteed to work in this. Technically speaking, it probably should, but without knowing exactly how high the RAM is and how much clearance we're going to have on this board, we can't be certain. So I wouldn't be surprised, let's just say that, if this is a little bit too big. So as long as you're okay with this, this is what you could go for. But otherwise, maybe look at getting that 12400F and then just use the stock cooler. That's also a solid way of doing it. Or of course, getting a different cooler, something that isn't quite as tall. Granted, it won't have the same cooling potential. You could look at getting a water cooler, but then obviously you're not really in the realms of budget rig. But let's have a look at our price. We're sat at $638, but that's without the CPU, so we said $170 for that. And that brings us to $809 US, which I know there's going to be comments saying that it is not a budget rig, that is too expensive. But realistically, you can always go for something less expensive. You can, of course, get the i3 that would come with a CPU cooler in the box. That would save yourself about, what, $100, like straight off the bat, so you'd be looking at $700, but that is when you start to get into the realms of compromises. So if you want a pretty much compromise-free gaming experience, you can still upgrade this to like an i7 CPU at a later date. There are more things that you can do, loads of gaming performance. I think you're going to be very happy with this, but if you do want to save yourself some money, look at the used market for GPU, maybe get yourself a cheaper CPU, but other than that, I think I'm pretty happy. Just be aware of that cooler. But let's move on now to the rigs that I'm actually most excited for, because we can finally use the new GPUs and at least see what's on offer with the mid-range build. Hooray! And for this one, I think we're going to use scan.co.uk. Good old GBP. Remember, current pricing on everything is linked down below, both USD and GBP, and all localized currencies pretty much. Wow. And right off the bat, we are going to be using that Ryzen 7600. And here you can see in the UK, it does seem to be quite well priced. This is the best CPU out there, really, I think, when it comes to price to performance, because you really are getting a lot of single-threaded performance. It's only 6 cores, so it's not going to be the most future-proof thing out there, but then it's AM5, so you can just swap it out to pretty much anything else that comes out in the next few years, really, right? It's going to be pretty impressive now, very upgradable in the future. We will, of course, also be needing a motherboard for it. Usually something's on offer. Gaming AX look from Gigabyte for $190, but we've got the Asus TUF for exactly $200. TUF boards, really, really good. Big fan of them. This one also comes with Wi-Fi. This one, as I say, is a no-brainer. We will, of course, also be needing to grab ourselves some RAM, and again, 5600 or above is pretty much what we're looking at here. AMD really does like low latency memory, so if you can buy something that is lower on the CAS values, that is definitely going to help. We'll step up to 32 gigabytes of RAM here, so obviously the price of this rig will be more expensive, but this is a lot more future-proof and is going to be suitable for 1440p gaming. You can get some RGB list stuff, but when we come down here, we've got this 5600 megahertz kit, CAS 36 for £100. I think that is going to make quite a lot of sense, so let's add that one to our basket. I will add that Scan definitely seem to favour Corsair memory though, because they don't often seem to have much else, which I find odd. I guess they have some sort of deal with them, so do shop around, don't specifically buy the Corsair memory. It's good, but other options are available. Sound like the BBC. Let's also grab ourselves an SSD, once again 1TB or above, Gen 4. We've got this 1TB Crucial P3 Plus for £42, or you can go for the much faster one here that I think we will go for £57, also from Crucial. And then of course, we're also going to need ourselves a cooler, and you can use the stock one that comes in the box. I mean, to be honest, the Ryzen one actually isn't too bad, but this doesn't use masses of power, so you don't need a huge cooling solution. But crucially for me, I love the fact that if you get a third-party cooler, it runs a lot quieter, which is something that annoys me. But if you are like a headset gamer and it really doesn't bother you at all, then just use the stock one for now, save yourself the money, and if you need to upgrade it, get it at a later date. So let's go ahead and see what we have. You can always buy really cheap ones, but I wouldn't always advise that. There's this one from Arctic Freezer actually, A35 RGB for around about £40. That's worth considering. And then below it, you've got the AK400. This is obviously a lot more minimal, isn't going to be to everybody's tastes, but I've used this before and I'm pretty happy with the performance actually. Not going to be for everyone's tastes, but it's very minimal, and personally speaking, I like that, and it is going to be quiet enough that you're not going to have to worry about a very loud system. Obviously, once you've tuned your fans, of course. Right, so our motherboard combination is now ready, which means moving on to the most important thing for any gaming rig, which is of course the GPU. And at this price point, we pretty much have a couple of choices, right? You're looking at something like an RTX 4060, or maybe you're looking at what, like a Radeon 7600, or are we? Let's go right ahead and compare the price of the 6600, which is about RRP, around about £250, with our 4060. And actually here the 4060 does look to be a, I don't want to say stronger option, a more flexible option, let's say. So both of these are the options I think that would make the most amount of sense on paper, but there is also one other option. I mean, actually there's loads of options, you get the point. However, if you navigate over to the previous generation, you'll see that we still have the RX 6700 XT on sale, and crucially, this has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, which I think is so much more useful than better ray tracing support, maybe even DLSS support, because this is just going to be so much more future-proof. You're not going to have to upgrade this, because not only do you have a decent bit more performance than something like a 7600, which is perfect for 1440p, but you have that extra VRAM. And make no mistake, 12 gigabytes of VRAM in like 3-4 years time is probably not going to be enough either. So why would you want to go for 8 gig now when you can spend a tiny bit more money and get the 6700 XT? So actually between all of these cards, I'd say probably getting the 7600 or getting the 6700 makes sense, because whilst the Nvidia card does have better ray tracing and things like that, it's so close in price to the card that has 12 gig more VRAM, and I think for most people that just makes more sense. So let's go ahead and add this one from Sapphire to our basket. And then we will need to look at a chassis. And this is the sort of price point where you can, not splurge, but you can buy what I would describe as the nicer chassis, because you're not really going to have to compromise. And yes, we do have the featured ones at the top that they could mean anything. They don't specifically say what featured means, but they're from the big brands, and to be fair, they are very, very good chassis. I mean, both the 4000D and the H5 Flow, our cases are built in. I mean, I really like the H5 Flow. It's pretty neat. I mean, the stock case fans that come with them aren't fantastic, but you can tune them down, so it's not the end of the world. I mean, so much so that I think, again, let's just go right ahead and go with this. Do shop around for different chassis, make sure it supports all of your components, but crucially, make sure it is something that has good airflow and something you really like the look of, because this is something that hopefully you'll keep for a very long time. I'll get Editor Carl to overlay a build we did in the H5. It was an all white build actually. That was with an i5, pretty cool one. Check that out, top right hand corner of your screen. And then we need to move on to our final component, which is the power supply. And here we're gonna look at a 750 watt unit, because it does give us a little bit more option. Here we have a System Power 10 from Be Quiet if you want to go for a decent value option, but I would consider this semi-modular one actually from Sonic. Semi-modular basically means that the cables that you're definitely going to use are attached, so your like big motherboard, ATX connection, your 8-pin at the top left-hand corner of your screen, but then the others that are optional, you don't need to use them. The only time I wouldn't recommend one of these is if you can get like a similar modular one for the same sort of price, or fundamentally if you know in the future you're going to swap all of the cables out, because it's a lot easier to do that rather than having to use the cable extensions and then have just more cable around the back of your PC. But assuming you're okay with semi-modular, Sonic 80 plus gold rated, we're going to add the G12 GM750 to our basket. And then drumroll please for the total price of this rig. I'm pretty sure we've got everything, and that comes in at £1,116. So this is a decent wad of money, make no mistake. You can of course buy something cheaper. I mean, there's always things that you can cut down, but again, I do think you're getting something here that is, well, I guess no compromise. The only thing here that isn't necessarily going to last for years and years is probably that CPU. As soon as games properly need 8 cores, this is going to hold you back slightly, but I do want to emphasize the fact that the single core performance on this is so good that in the vast majority of games that you're going to want to play, this is perfect for most gamers right now. The only exception be people that want to like do streaming or loads of activities whilst gaming at the same time. Not going to be ideal for that, but otherwise I think this is a really easy rig to recommend. But if you have any changes or things you'd want to make to it, let us know down in the comments below. But wait, what's that? There's one more, because of course we do need to look into our high-end rig, and this isn't actually going to be like a stupidly expensive rig here today. We're going to look at the new cards from AMD. You've got the 7700 XT and the 7800 XT. And both of these cards will sort of slot in around about the 4070 sort of price point. The 4070, man, unless you specifically want DLSS and better ray tracing, Nvidia have pretty much been priced out this generation by AMD for anything under £1,000 now, right? I mean, they did it to themselves. I'm not saying Nvidia is bad, it's just the fact that you've got to pay quite a premium to get that extra RTX performance. It's like an RTX tax. AMD have kind of cocked it up a little bit though, because the 7700 XT, at least in the UK, I think in the US as well, the price is just silly because it's barely any cheaper, yet the performance is quite different. If you want to see our full review of these two cards, you can find it in the top right corner of your screen and you can see in much greater detail why this is. But here we have, look, the 7800 XT Pulse going for 509, or you can get the 7700 XT for as cheap as 450, so £50 difference. But bear in mind, you also get 4GB more VRAM on the 7800 XT. I think it's definitely worth the extra money now and you won't regret it later. So yes, here you have three cards, all from Sapphire. I'm not happy to specifically recommend just these ones though. I want to have a look at some other sites. So let's have a look at Scan. And yeah, it's actually quite a lot cheaper here. So I would go for one of these ones from XFX because they have three fans and they cost the same sort of money really. I think they will run a lot cooler, but more importantly, run a lot quieter. Bear in mind, if you're gonna have it on your desk, makes a big difference. So let's go for this XFX Merc 319. We'll use this one as a placeholder so we can get pricing. Then we're going to need our motherboard and CPU, and at this sort of price point, I think the best options really are something like a 7700 from AMD, or if you want to step up to even more performance, get the 7800 X3D. They all come with a copy of Starfield, so you can have two copies, because you get one free with the GPU as well. So yes, here you have the 7700 for £308. Or you can get the 7800 X3D for $368. I paid $450 for mine. Did have a discount code, but I mean, come on. I should have waited. We'll of course also need to grab ourselves an AMD motherboard, and I'm looking at B650E here really, because I want the extra PCI Generation 5 that you get from the E. Steel Legend is a solid option, but can we go for something like a Strix? Yes, here we go, look. B650E, gaming Wi-Fi, has everything you need. ASUS, obviously, very strong brand. They've done some questionable things over the last year or so, but I would still trust their motherboards if I was buying one for myself. What do we got in terms of cases? Interestingly, the featured cases don't seem to be popping up. I really do want to grab this Corsair 3000D and actually do a build, because I've seen it, but I haven't built on it yet. But is there anything here that grabs the eye? Yes, there is. An interesting story with this. This is the Landcall 216. I love this chassis. It is highly recommended, but we've actually been using it as a benchmarking rig. So I've been wanting to do another build with it for ages, and this is going to be a good opportunity. Get subscribed if you're not already, and we do a full build on this. This is fantastic. You've got two 160mm fans at the front, comes in black or white, and is available for £110, which I think is a cracking price. So this is a very strong contender for our rig. It's going to be added to the basket. Once again, we'll grab ourselves some DDR5 memory. We want something that is AMD Expo if we can. Good old Control F comes in handy here. What have we got? Corsair options, strong but seem to be fairly expensive. But here we have our Fury Beast. We've used this loads of times on the channel, 32GB, and it's C36. So it's not the absolute best, but I think for the money, this is going to make a lot of sense. So for £140, RGB, let's go with that. We'll grab ourselves a Gen 4 SSD, but this time we'll go for 2TB, I think. And there's a very strong option straight away. We have our 980 Pro. It's not the absolute fastest. We've got the 990 Pro now. This is a fantastic drive, and I think the 2TB one, when it came out, would have been like £250, £300, something crazy like that. So 118, good price. Let's add this to our basket. And then I think it's literally just the power supply to go, and I want something that is going to be pretty efficient, full modular, and 850 watts. We've got this tough power one here. Are there any other options? Not massively. You've got this Seasonic one here actually for 140, but then that's also gold rated. I do like Seasonic, but I think in this situation, I'd probably go with the Thermaltake. So let's add that to our basket. Of course, because we're going for a high-end CPU, this doesn't actually come with a cooler, and this time we are going to go for something a little bit more upmarket. We're going to go for an all-in-one. They do look more attractive, and they make the PC a little bit easier to move around. They open up up a little bit. I like them, not for everyone, but you could say the same about air coolers. And actually, I'm drawn to these two. I've used one of these before. This is the Deepcool LS520. It's a 240mm cooler, so it should fit in the chassis nice and easily. It's a very attractive one as well, but it doesn't break the bank. Obviously, the performance isn't going to be quite as good as the very best, but likewise, this isn't a CPU that actually uses crazy amounts of power. I think you will have to tune these quite well because they can run quite loud, and this is a chip that likes to run quite hot, so it's quite difficult to get that delicate custom curve working, otherwise it just sort of goes like full whack a lot of the time, which is annoying. But for the price, I think both of these are very strong options. I'm not 100% sure what the difference between the SE and the normal one is though, so Ed Carl, what's the difference? But for now, we're going to assume the difference isn't anything huge, and we're going to add our $85.99 SE to the basket. And with that, I think that's all of our components all set up and ready to go. And I love the fact that we do get 2 copies of Starfield. Lucky you, because you get one free with the CPU and one free with the GPU. We do need to add an extra £5 onto this total because I use this GPU as a placeholder. But everything is in here, and that brings our total to a total of £1,758.88, which obviously is a lot of money. This is actually similar to the RTX 4070 rig that we did ITX a few months ago. You can check this video out in the top right corner of your screen. And we actually compared it against an Xbox Series X, which obviously is a lot cheaper, but then you could actually see the differences of what this money will get you, because I know a lot of people watching this will be interested in moving into PC gaming, but you're not entirely sure whether it's worth it. That's the video for you, because it walks you through all of the differences. But yeah, I'm really happy with all of these rigs, especially these high-end ones. I think they're fantastic. They're going to give you so much performance, especially in something like Starfield. Personally speaking, I'm really excited about Alan Wake 2 as well, which is going to be a great game to play. But let me know down in the comment section below, what do you make of these rigs? Do be very cautious of that CPU cooler on the budget one. I'm not going to actively recommend it. I'm just going to leave the links there, so make of that what you will. But do let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Smash the like button, get yourself subscribed, and if you are interested in current pricing on any of the components featured in this video, you can find them linked down below with my Amazon affiliate links.
And while you're down there, why not gaze into the RGB goodness of MSI's Core Liquid E CPU coolers. Compatible with both AM5 and Intel 1700 and fitted with an enlarged copper base, these coolers are ideal for the latest generation CPUs. They're available in both 240 and 360mm flavors, and they're fully decked out with not only upgraded fans, but also a durable 3-phase pump motor, which is perfect for your next build. Grab yours today with a link down below.
But thank you so much for watching this video. We'll catch you in the next one.